it's a little terrifying because you absolutely cannot miss.
Goalies now are completely at a premium.
Not, right? Like, Canada doesn't have a ton of great options.
What's up, hockey fans? Welcome to the Hockey News Big Show. I'm your host, Katie Gaus, joined by Michael Traikos and Ryan Kennedy. Guys, we have officially made it through the offseason into the regular season with opening night kicking off last night. We had 3 games on the schedule, so 2025-2026 is started. This is real. The Stanley Cup tweeted out that he's back on the market. So this is it. This is it. We're going for it again. And I want to kind of just discuss quickly the games from last night before we dive into more of the opening night rosters that we're going to continue to see and some of the exciting news in terms of signings that we've already had going on here today on Wednesday as we record all of this. So kicking things off was the Florida Panthers and the Chicago Blackhawks. We saw the Panthers raise that Stanley Cup banner. They get the win over Chicago 3-2. Talk to me a little bit, guys. Ryan, start us off. Just thoughts on the game in terms of what we saw. Panthers' depth was on display again in terms of scoring. Some nice moves from some of the Chicago young guys. What stood out to you?
Yeah, I think there was some positives to take away from both teams. If you think about, Frank Nazar in Chicago coming off that big contract extension, getting on the board early, or getting on the score sheet early, I should say. Yeah. You hope that with the Blackhawks, they can find ways to win those games. But the fact that it was close, I think is like a nice start for them. For the Panthers, we knew that depth was going to have to be the answer this year with, of course, Sasha Barkov, injured for the regular season in the foreseeable future, and Matthew Tkachuk out of the lineup as well. So I would say, in general, pretty good start for both teams and definitely positives that both can take away.
Yeah, this is why the Panthers are so dangerous, right, Ryan? Like you're missing Barkov, you're missing Tkachuk, and yet I get it. The Blackhawks aren't going to be a Stanley Cup threat this year, but let's face it, a win is a win, and this is still the NHL. So to go into action without 2 of your star players and still be like, yeah, we're okay. We're still going to be winning games. We're still the number 1 seed when it comes to winning the Stanley Cup. It's more than impressive in my mind.
Yeah, it was a good performance, good showing up with the crowd. And it was a nice show for Spencer Knight, again, going up against the team that drafted him, former team, not necessarily always getting a lot of help, but he made some really solid saves. So you hope to see him continuing to build this season, because that's another huge piece for Chicago as they step forward into what eventually should be a stronger team as we get some help from Bedard. We'll see. But let's talk about the other game happening on the East Coast, the New York Rangers and the Pittsburgh Penguins. So Mike Sullivan, first-time head coach with New York, now the bench boss. So he's going up against his former team, Dan Muse, behind the bench for Pitt. And he made an interesting move. Artur Shilov's getting the start instead of Tristan Jarry. Penguins shut out the Rangers 3-0. Michael, anything other than the goalie choice that stood out from that game for you?
Well, it was the right choice in picking Shilov's over Tristan Jarry. And, we'll see what this Penguins team is about. Obviously, very little offense coming from those Rangers. And I think that's just a matter of Mike Sullivan trying to implement a system on a new team. And, for Mike Sullivan, this is all new. Like, I don't know how many years he's been coaching the Penguins, basically since they won the first of back-to-back cup back in 2016 or something like that.
Yeah.
But the one thing that kind of stood out, and I was hearing this on Twitter all night, was Erik Karlsson looked like a better version of Erik Karlsson. So, that's great news for the Penguins. I think that's also great news for Kyle Dubas in case he wants to, find someone to take on Erik Karlsson's contract. Hint, hint, Vegas. So we'll maybe talk about that a little later.
Yeah, Ryan, what did you kind of make? I mean, I know I was seeing a lot about, the excitement and the hype that could have been for New York coming out, centennial year, rocking the jerseys, MSG was packed. And they they literally laid an egg, scoring 0 goals. But what did you think of kind of the Rangers we saw?
Yeah, I mean, okay, it's only one game, but, it's a little troubling that, playing a Pittsburgh team that we don't have high expectations for necessarily. I know we're going to talk about, surprise rookies and opening the season, a bit later in the show. But, they had Ben Kindle and Harrison Brunicky in the lineup, Pittsburgh did. And the Rangers still couldn't generate anything. And I guess, if I was going to be alarmist, I would say, like, does this team have the fire outside of JT Miller, who we know is obviously a passionate leader?
Right.
Do they have the fire to turn things around after last year's disappointment? Like, who's going to be, in the fight with JT Miller? They've kind of gotten rid of a lot of those guys in the past sort of 2 years, year and a half. If you think about, Trouba and Kreider, guys that might have been a little more vocal, guys that can sort of push things physically. So not a great start. And let's see what they do in the first sort of week or two. Because I think Mike makes a great point. I mean, Mike Sullivan, he's brand new. He's going to bring the system. But I will say, if you think about when Sullivan first got to the Penguins, they won a Stanley Cup.
It's pretty immediate.
It was very immediate. And at the same time, you look at, Dan Muse coming in, first time head coach in the NHL, and obviously taking on this Penguins team. And for anyone that knows Dan Muse, that game was exactly the kind of hockey and the system that he wants the team to be playing. So he was pretty successful in immediately implementing the kind of hockey he wants to see. And with kind of an interesting Penguins roster, that defensive style is certainly going to be partially what they need to do in order to steal some wins and to get some victories this season. So good showing for him. And very interesting to see from both teams. All right, last game of the night, way out west. If you were staying up late, I was not able to stay up for the whole thing. Colorado and LA, the Avalanche beating the Kings 4-1. We got 2 goals from Natchez right in the midst of all the conversations of him wanting to potentially extend or not with Colorado. Nathan McKinnon sets the new Avalanche points record, passing Joe Sakic in terms of points scored with the Colorado Avalanche. So a lot to kind of take away from that game, but certainly a good start for Colorado. Michael, what did you like?
I liked LA's jerseys. I like the helmets.
We'll talk about that later. Yeah. Yes.
But you know what? I really love the skill that was on display. And you mentioned it, Katie, like Nathan McKinnon, what a gorgeous feed to Natchez on the one goal where McKinnon basically takes the puck in, circles around the net, and everyone's got eyes on Nate, and he just finds, Natchez in front. And if Natchez can bury all those goals again, like he's going to get a lot of money this year. Same thing with Makar. Like he made it just a gorgeous play, dipsy doodling around a bunch of defensemen, and then on the rebound, the Avs scored again. So, Colorado, they're going to be a fun team to watch, and I actually think that we're talking about Stanley Cup predictions. I made my predictions already in the yearbook, so I can't really go back on that. But I'm starting to doubt whether I picked the right teams because I didn't have Colorado in the final, and now I'm thinking like, what is their weakness right now? Because they look great.
Yeah, maybe it's goaltending because they did start the year at least without Blackwood, but Wedgwood seeming to be getting the job done. Ryan, what kind of stood out to you from that game other than great jerseys?
Yeah, great jerseys. I think, sticking with Colorado, coming into this season, it was, are they healthier than last year? Yes.
Yes.
Are things a little more stable? Yes. We've talked on the show before about the return of Gabriel Landeskog, the fact that, thinking about Val Nichushkin and how he impacts the club. It just feels like they start this year in a much better headspace, and they have the guys that they know can get the job done. And I think, we saw that great chemistry with Nettish and McKinnon last year after the Rantanen trade. But, with time, it gets even better. And, Nettish, this is a guy that, he's in his prime right now. And, he's not Mikko Rantanen. Few players are. But, I mean, he's a pretty good substitute given the circumstances at the time. And again, with Landeskog back in the lineup, I just think it puts the Avs, I'll say, at ease in the sense of, they know the dynamics between all their leaders, and Landeskog, he wears that C for a reason. And I think that, that's great news for Colorado because, as we said before, that Central Division is so difficult that you really have to be on your toes all season long.
Yeah, and for Natchez as well, with the contract discussions that have been coming up, a lot of the things that are being said is, whether he wants to go for big money or acknowledging the fact that he is such a good fit in terms of his game with the Colorado style, with the way they play. And again, it's for some guys, it really is just about money, but to not be to walk away from playing alongside Nathan McKinnon, I mean, you're gonna have not just a lot of fun, you're gonna have a lot of success. So it keeps things definitely interesting, but certainly they both picked up right where they left off. And they're going to be dangerous throughout the rest of this season. All right. Well, we've got more games getting underway tonight as other teams kick off their regular season. So let's talk about some opening night rosters in general. Guys who made rosters or guys who were left off. Surprises kind of on both sides of the coin. So Ryan, for you, what is a name that surprised you, whether he is on or not on a roster to start the season?
Yeah, so I got one. I got one for each.
Okay.
So I'll start with the positives. Emmett Finney in Detroit. This is a 7th round draft pick in
Love that.
2023. Cracks the roster. I don't know if he was on anybody's radar, but
Right.
this is a kid that showed in the preseason that he could play on any line. He could play with skilled guys. He's got that grit. He's also got some really great vision. He had an incredible pass sort of behind his back right in front of the net for a goal during the preseason that I don't think Red Wings fans are going to forget for a while. So, I mean, good on him for staking a roster spot out in Detroit where, clearly there were spots available. This is a team that, has some really great top 6 forwards, but depth I think has always been a problem. I shouldn't say always, but at least in the past decade when they've been in this drought, it's been a problem for them. On the other side of the coin, Daniil Boot, the giant forward for Utah, did not make the opening roster. Dmitry Simashev, the defenseman who played with him at Yaroslavl in the KHL, did make it. And this one's interesting because it's not surprising. It's not like he did anything wrong. Sometimes it's a numbers game. Sometimes when you have a player coming over to the NHL and to the North American game for the first time, it takes some adjustment. But it'll be interesting to see, how much time he spends in the AHL or if he ends up getting called up, after a game or two, because if I'm not mistaken, he does have a clause in his contract that if he's not in the NHL, he can go back to Russia.
Right.
I don't think he will, but you never know.
All right, Michael, who's your names that you are either surprised to see them on or off of the roster to kick off the year?
For me, it's Nashville's Braden Martin and 5th overall pick. We know that this guy is going to be a stud in the NHL. I just didn't expect it to be, this early where Nashville is going to be leaning on him. And it looks like he's going to be lining up on the top line with Philip Forsberg and Ryan O'Reilly.
Go for it, right?
Yeah, if that's the case, that's just wild. I don't know if that's the right move. Like Austin Matthews, when he came into the NHL, as good as Austin Matthews was, and he scored 4 goals in his first game, he wasn't the number 1 center in Toronto. Like he was still maybe number 2 or even number 3, depending on how you went down the pecking order. So, it is a bit shocking, but, when you're the Nashville Predators and you had the season that you had and you're looking to inject some life into that veteran roster, especially one that's thin down the middle, I guess you don't have that many options. So we'll see how that one goes.
Yeah, I mean, just throwing them right into the fire. But like you mentioned, with everything happening in Nashville, they're looking for something. They're looking for a spark. They're looking for something different. Maybe this is it. Will be interesting to see how his start to the NHL season goes. All right, how about players who made the opening night rosters who could really surprise us by actually, not just being on the team, but making an impact with the team? Michael, who stands out to you?
I'm going to stay or go to Edmonton here, and I'm going to mention Ike Howard as well as Matthew Savoy.
Okay.
I don't know if they're going to make a huge impact, but I know the Oilers need them to make a huge impact. And I say this because, the clock is now ticking on Connor McDavid. And, a lot of what's going to determine whether he stays in Edmonton is probably going to be on GM Stan Bowman and what he can build around McDavid and can he continue to build a championship contender. But a lot of what's going to go into McDavid staying is how quickly can Howard and Savoy and some of the other young players, how can they make that jump into not just being regular players, but impact players? So, you know, I have high hopes for both guys. Savoy was just a dynamic junior player. Obviously, going from Buffalo to Edmonton gives him a great opportunity. We'll see how much time either of these guys gets with either Draisaitl or McDavid, but the opportunity is there for them.
All right, Ryan, you're staying in the Pacific. Who are you have your eyes on?
I am, yeah. I'm going to go with Braden Coots with the Vancouver Canucks. Like Brady Martin, he was taken in the first round this summer and went straight from the podium to the show, which is always impressive. Yeah. And again, maybe he only gets 9 games, but maybe he sticks around. The Canucks are a team that, again, like, they have a nice top end, but not necessarily a ton of depth. And I think, losing Pius Suter over the summer, that's going to hurt them because he did a lot of things, including kill penalties. Braden Coots did kill penalties in the WHL last year with Seattle. He actually had 3 points shorthanded. So I don't know if they're going to trust him with penalty killing right away, but what I do know about Braden Coots is that he has an incredible motor. He can create things on a line, even if he's not surrounded by a lot of talent. Like, he didn't have a lot of options with him with the Seattle Thunderbirds last year in the dub. Like, Radim Murko was on the blue line. But in terms of forwards, there weren't a lot of other high-end guys on that dub team. So for Braden Coots, he's very comfortable making sure that his line can produce no matter what line it is. And if you're the Canucks, I mean, even if he's a bottom 6 guy to start his career with, maybe he can get you that secondary or tertiary offense. And again, if you're Vancouver, you want to get back to the playoffs, you need every line contributing. Yeah. And maybe Braden Coots is part of the answer.
Yeah, it's fun this time of the year, right, where you're seeing these new names and not knowing who is going to be the surprise, who is going to develop quicker, who is going to show up and make a difference. And again, both great answers because, as you mentioned, they both are on teams that need them to be showing up, right? They're not just a happy bonus if they end up showing up. Like, these are teams that are at a point where they want to be winning and they need some help to do it. So love to see it. We'll see what these guys do in the early stages of the season. All right, how about Toronto? Originally sent their guy Easton Cowan down to the AHL, kept Jacob Quillen up with the big club. However, this morning the Leafs announced that Quillen has been assigned to the Marlies. So Easton Cowan getting called back up, likely to make his NHL debut tonight. So first things first, I know we've talked about him on the show previously, but now that it seems the debut is imminent, Michael, what are the expectations for Cowan as he starts the season with the Leafs?
So he's not going to get a top line role, Katie. So you have to temper your expectations. That being said, he's playing for Craig Berube. And what we know about Craig Berube is he loves to roll 4 lines. Like, if you look at that Blues team that won back in 2019, like, Robert Thomas was on your 4th line. So, you can make an impact. Whatever ice time Cowan gets, he's going to have to block shots, try to finish checks, do something. And, there's going to be an opportunity for him to kind of work his way up the ladder. But in terms of the expectations, you just hope that he's getting enough meaningful minutes so that his development progresses. And if it doesn't, we've already heard Brad Treliving say he has no problem with having him in the AHL because ideally he just needs to play. Yeah,
absolutely. Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Mike makes a great point there. And I think that, if you looked at the Leafs last year, especially in the postseason, their bottom 6 didn't really do much in the parlance of the internet. It was a lot of cardio, not a lot of scoring chances, definitely not a lot of finishing. And, the good thing about Easton Cowan is if he's playing at the top of his game, he can be a good two-way player. And obviously the Leafs are going to need him to have that defensive side, but also, if he can bring some of his dynamism offensively, even to the bottom 6, then that's a big step up from what they had last year. And I think what we've seen just in the preseason and some of the moves, including, waiving David Kampf and letting Pontus Holmberg go in the summer. I think he ended up in Tampa. You need to do stuff. If you're out there as a forward, even if you're only playing 14 minutes a game, you got to do some stuff. You got to do something out there. Yeah, it can't just be lugging the puck around. And Easton Cowan has the skill set to do so. So as a two-way forward, I think he can establish himself early on.
Yeah, you make a good point, Ryan, because a lot of us kind of think like, hey, you just on the fourth line, just, skate around, finish a check, and make sure you don't get scored on. But I think the NHL sort of evolved a lot past that.
Yeah.
Even if you're on the fourth line and you're only going to get like under 10 minutes a night, like they've got to be important minutes. Like you better get, at the end of the night, maybe a shot on net, at least something. Like you said, do something out there, not just, what would you say, cardio? Just do cardio?
Cardio. Yeah.
I love that.
And look
We're
at
just
the
out here getting some cardio, putting some miles on it.
Yeah. Look at the Florida Panthers last year. Their third line, Lundell, Marchand, Luosterainen. That was an incredible line. And
that's not a third line, Ryan. All right. Most teams, that's
using
like
the Panthers as an example. Using the Panthers as an example is just not fair to basically everyone else.
They're the standard. They're the bar.
That's the bar. Can you get there? All right, real quick, because I don't want to spend too much time on this, but is it yay or nay? Do we like the pickups from the waivers of Sammy Blais and Cayden Primeau for Toronto?
I'll go quick. Sammy Blais, love that pickup. Obviously, he's got a history with Berube, so that makes a lot of sense. I think that's a defense that you could, you're constantly looking for ways to get more offense, and I think Blais might be that guy.
Ryan, do we concur?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, with Cayden Primeau, it feels sort of like a placeholder, like a just in case kind of thing. But with Blais, with him and Dakota Joshua, all of a sudden, that bottom six gets a lot more physical and a lot bigger. And I think that's great for Craig Berube because he knows what kind of hockey team he wants, and he knows how to win a Stanley Cup with a lineup like that.
All right. Well, speaking of defense, the Golden Knights are going to be without one of their biggest pieces. Alex Pietrangelo officially on this new SELTIR, season ending. He is done the entire year, playoffs. There is no coming back. There is no loophole. He is done, and it could mean the end of his career entirely. We will have to see. But Vegas getting full cap relief from this move. So what do we expect, Ryan, to see them do with the hole and the cap that they now have to fill Pietrangelo's spot?
Well, to me, the most obvious fit would be a trade that brings Rasmus Andersson from Calgary to Vegas. So even though Vegas, Pietrangelo's salary, I think his cap hit was like 8.8 or something like that, but they were already over the cap. So it's really more like 5.8 million in terms of space. Luckily, Rasmus Andersson makes like 4 and change. So if they traded for Andersson, even if it meant, not losing a roster player, they'd still have like $1 million of cap space that they could use later on if they needed to. But with Rasmus Andersson, we know what he can bring to the table. He's a solid offensive defenseman, and I think, and he could eat minutes. Yeah. And I think that's a big thing where the question right now is how do you replace all the minutes that Petro had for the Vegas Golden Knights over the years? And I think Anderson's the perfect fit in that regard.
Yeah, I agree with Ryan. He makes a lot of great points about Andersson just being a natural fit. I guess the only concern is, does Vegas have any first-round picks that they could send to Calgary? do they have anyone left, Ryan?
Right.
Probably not. But, they do have a couple of, high-end prospects. Like they could send like a Trevor Connolly the other way, for example. It's not a deep pool. I'll give you that.
No, they've kind of gone the way of Tampa, right? Where they're just get rid of all the assets and all the things right now because they just focused on the team at hand. But that would make it.
Can we trade you a 2030 first rounder? Are we allowed to do that?
That's basically what it's come down to. You look at their history of first rounders, and it's like Cody Glass out, Eric Brandstrom out. And it's like
they're all gone. They are
every
gone.
year.
Yeah.
Them in Pittsburgh, they love their first round picks until they pick them.
Right.
All right, well, let's talk about a big name that is now extended with his team. Kyle Connor, Winnipeg Jets. They've reached an agreement on the contract extension that is 8 years at $12 million per year. So that's a huge piece to the team that the Jets are able to lock down now. And another UFA that would be next summer. Things are going to get kind of boring, I think, comes off the board. So what are we thinking about this deal for Winnipeg, Ryan?
Well, you know what? I think it's a great deal for the Jets because, as we've talked about before, it's no secret that it's tough to get free agents to come to Winnipeg necessarily, just because, Canadian markets, some guys just don't want that pressure. Obviously it's very cold in Winnipeg as well.
It
And
is very cold.
if you can avoid that, a lot of hockey players do. But Kyle Connor, I mean, he was one of their first round draft picks.
OG.
Came up through the Jets, has been an awesome player for them. Some of the greatest speed in the NHL. He's become an elite goal scorer. And I think that, if you look at some of the other guys that are making around 12 million, maybe Kyle Connor is not quite at that level, but I think this is a good deal for Winnipeg because now he's locked down long term and you don't have to worry about losing him, because at the same time, it's hard to find a player of Kyle Connor's caliber. Say that 5 times fast.
And again, like you touched on at the very beginning, it is Winnipeg. And as we've seen other teams struggle, there are no palm trees. So to get him for a commitment of 8 years at 12 million, which is going to probably, like we've talked about so many times, look so much better as the cap goes up and up and up.
Totally.
It seems like it's actually a good value when you look at some of the comparables. Michael, do you like the deal?
I love the deal, and I think it's a totally fair deal between player and team. Like you mentioned, Mikko Rantanen and Mitch Marner are making the exact same AAV this year. And you look at Rantanen, 294 goals in 652 games, basically 0.45 goals per game. Kyle Connor is at 0.46 goals per game. He's played fewer games, obviously has fewer goals by 10. Same thing, Mitch Marner, 741 points in 657 games. That's 1.1 points per game. Kyle Connor's at 0.95 points per game. So very comparable player as both guys. The only thing that Marner and Rantanen have the edge really on is that they've played longer. It took, I guess, Kyle Connor one extra year to kind of make that jump from to the NHL. But since he's been there, you look at top goal scorer since he's been in the league, and I think he's like somewhere like 5 or 6 on that list, which is really remarkable. So I'm with Ryan. I like this deal, and unless you're Jonathan Toews, who's from Winnipeg, it's hard to attract people. So, you need guys like Kyle Connor and Connor Hellebuyck to re-sign long-term.
Yeah, he's committed. He's there. But like I mentioned, and you guys have talked about some of these names before, but we're running out of like all these blockbuster UFAs to look forward to as we approach next summer and the off season and free agency. So, with all these deals getting done at this point, Michael, who in your mind is the most interesting player left that is currently in this contract extension talk situation?
Well, we talked about him earlier on the show, but Marty Nashis already off to a 2-goal start this season. Colorado's got to get him signed and got to get him signed quickly, because if he's going to spend the year next to Nate McKinnon, you can basically pencil this guy in for 35 to 45 goals this year. I think that's probably fair. He's that good of a sniper, and him and Nate just seem to have clicked right off the hop. So for me, that's the guy that, I don't think he's going to make it to July 1. I think he's going to get signed earlier, and Colorado, better sign him before Christmas, because like I said, he's going to be on fire.
There's a lot of pressure there too, like when you consider not just like the player and the deal and what it means for the Avalanche moving forward, but because of the history, because of the Mikko Rantanen debacle, right? Like I think that just adds to it. The fan base, I feel, would riot slightly if they traded Mikko for Nashis being this, replacement piece, and then all of a sudden he's gone too. That would be a little bit of a tough pill to swallow. So some pressure on CMAC in Colorado to get that deal done. What do you think, Ryan? Who's the guy that you've got your eyes on that just is more interesting now, but probably won't make it to free agency?
Well, I look at Jack Eichel in Vegas, and, he's a Stanley Cup winner. He's an elite number 1 center. He's a two-way guy. Currently making 10 million, obviously with the cap going up, I think you can easily pencil him in for 13 or 14 million on his next deal. Vegas, what we have seen in the past few years, particularly, is, they are not sentimental. They will do whatever they think is best for the organization in terms of personnel. They will move on, as we talked about, they'll move on from draft picks and prospects as quickly as they can. They will jettison players if they need the cap space. And, for a team that already has a bunch of guys signed, and they also now have this uncertainty with Pietrangelo, like, does he return next season? We all hope he does. Hopefully this year off lets him, sort of mend all those wounds that he has. But if he's back in the lineup, can you afford that ticket for Jack Eichel? And is it the best thing to do for your lineup? And I think for Eichel, he knows his value. And, there's only so much of a discount you want to take. So I think that's a very interesting scenario to look for because obviously he's a crucial part of the Golden Knights. But there's a lot of other teams out there that I think would say, we will give you $14-15 million to be our number one center.
On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being he's going to make it all the way to free agency and 1 being he resigns like it's done, where would you say Jack Eichel falls on that scale in terms of maybe being one of the big names we could see make it the full way?
I would say 5.
He's right in the middle. Yeah.
Put it at 50-50 right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think there's a happiness of playing in Vegas, and I think that's gonna, like, that Eichel already had. You know, you gotta remember, like, he's not that far removed from playing for a team like Buffalo, and I don't think he ever wants to go back to a scenario where he's on a team that's just getting their teeth kicked in year after year. So I think he's tasted success, and I don't think he wants to let it go, especially now that he's got a playmaker and Marner on his line.
True.
Let me throw a bomb out here. Okay. What if he went to Boston?
Well, he is a Boston guy. He's North right?
I love that.
Yeah. Just saying. They'll probably have the cap space.
Yeah, you know what? Him playing with Pasternak might make him a little happy.
That would be the answer.
Yeah.
That would be.
Ryan, I'm with you. What is that? I'm going higher now than 5. But like, I was with Ryan. Now I'm thinking like he's going to UFA status.
Ooh, maybe like a 7. Oh, I like the Boston idea. Again, like the familiarity, and again, we talked about it. Boston is in a place where, like, they're not a complete long shot by any stretch. They're not going to be getting their teeth kicked in. They're building something. They're kind of already on that step, but they have some money. They should have some space. All right, I like that bomb. Mark that right here. I'm very curious to see if that could play out. I like that one, Ryan. Okay, let's talk about we just discussed all these different deals and the extensions that players are signing, and of course, the biggest one was Connor McDavid signing the extension with Edmonton, but taking an incredibly team-friendly deal to do it in that 2 years that he's giving them, that deadline now. The clock is ticking. But does this McDavid deal and the money that he's leaving on the table to clearly help his team win now put pressure on other star players to make similar deals for the sake of their teams? Crosby, obviously, he set a precedent for this as well in the past with his $8.7 million special, taking a great deal for the Penguins to continue to try to be competitive. So, Michael, what kind of pressure is this putting on stars? It's obviously very case by case, but what do you think about it all?
Yeah, I do think it's going to be a unique situation where we're going to have to see this again. Like, will Austin Matthews, who's up in 3 years, take less money to remain in Toronto? I don't know. Like, maybe if he hasn't had success and he believes in the team and he really wants to win with William Nylander and John Tavares, I could see him doing that. But you got to remember, like, McDavid, he knows he's going to go down in history as one of the greatest to play the game. What he doesn't want to go down is the guy who also didn't win a cup. So I think he is more motivated than probably most NHLers. Like, I could see a scenario. Here's a guy that I could see maybe taking less money, Brady Tkachuk, because he's watched his brother now hoist the cup back to back. He seems to love Ottawa. More than that, I think he loves his teammates in Ottawa. I could see him staying on as a captain, saying, you know what, I'll make my money later on in life. I really just want to win a cup. But there's not too many guys like that.
Well, and I think also it's a factor of, like, when you bring Austin Matthews up, and I think a great example is, like, look at what Connor McDavid has just tasted twice in a row. He has been right there, and he obviously has enough experience with the group to know that they are capable of getting there. He believes that. If in 3 years, when it's time for Austin Matthews to make that decision and he hasn't tasted any of that, if he hasn't gotten closer, that's a huge factor as well into, what the belief truly looks like. And I think that's a lot of what it comes down to. Ryan, what do you think about the pressure players kind of are, this new kind of precedent that could be set for McDavid?
Yeah, it's so hockey. And
you don't see this happening in the NFL.
Yeah,
so hockey is so true.
Yeah, it's so hockey. And if I would suspect that the NHLPA is like, dudes, what are you doing? Like, we're, like
No.
we have, there's a reason that, like, we fight for all your labor rights, is that so you can earn more. And it's okay if like a couple of guys do it. And like Crosby, obviously Crosby and McDavid are two examples where it's like, okay, you can take the cap hit as it would be. You're also going to make like millions in endorsement deals, whether it's Tim Hortons or like, whatever the gambling thing McDavid does. I don't even remember what it is.
I think Crosby's doing like the Tylenol ads too. I mean, like he's just McDavid's got BetMGM, so
yeah, exactly. So there's that, but you want, if you're the union, you need guys to keep pushing things forward in terms of salary. So Kaprizov, he did his part, because I mean, like if you look back in the day, like if I'm not mistaken, like Ray Bourque was always the highest paid Boston Bruin, but he didn't make an exorbitant amount. And when other guys went to negotiate, the Bruins were like, "Oh, you think you're better than Ray Bourque? He only makes this much." And it's like, okay,
true.
well,
Right.
That's not the point. I think Gordie Howe might have been the same in Detroit way back when. So you need, just in terms of like pushing things forward for these athletes and the value they bring to the table, you need guys, even like Mikko Rantanen for that matter, what he went for. And obviously there was a breakdown in Colorado. You need to have that in terms of negotiations. Otherwise, you're going to have at one point like an artificial cap. Where teams will be able to suppress things because they'll say like, "Oh, you think you're better than Connor McDavid? He took this big discount." So something to think about.
Also, won't anyone think about the player agents, Ryan? Like Judd Mulder maybe lost out on like 500,000 in this by McDavid not going for like 17.5 million or something.
There's got to be like some kind of an under the table deal. Like, okay, I'll get this much from BetMGM and I'll send some to you since I just took a huge cut. Which is obviously coming out of your commission for this one. Oh, boy. Well, one thing that it did allow Edmonton to do, we've already started to see the impact, more signings. So we saw them locking in Jake Wallman. We saw the deal coming through just today for Mattias Ekholm, extended 3 years, $4 million AAV on that one. So what do we think about, obviously, Wallman, a good piece, Ekholm, a huge one as well. What do you guys like about those deals, Michael?
Listen, if I'm Connor McDavid and I just took less money and then the team went out and signed Ekholm for $4 million and Jake Wallman for $7 million, I'm not that happy. Okay,
really?
I'm sorry, but get me a number one winger. All right, get me someone that can pass the puck to.
Yeah,
not Ekholm, who I don't know. Ryan, you saw him a lot in the final. I saw him for a bit live, at least, and he looks like he's older and slower than ever before.
I mean, he's 35, right? The one thing I will say about the Ekholm deal is that it's only $4 million. And again, with the cap rising, that's like him making like $3 million. So I'm not too bothered by it personally. I get what you're saying. But when healthy, Ekholm's still very solid. That's the only question with some of these Oilers where it's Ekholm or Hyman. And Hyman's not old. It's just he plays a very physical game that can sometimes lead to injuries. Are they going to be ready when it matters the most?
Mm-hmm.
But that's the rub, though. You could always say like, "Hey, take less for the team." You know what? And then the GM just goes out and makes a boneheaded decision and uses that money elsewhere. And that's why I always kind of caution against taking less money because. And GMs don't know what they're doing. Like you give them extra cap space, and they just burn it on the first day on like the worst players.
Well,
Not that Ekholm's the worst player, but
you've got all this money to spend. You don't need to be as perfectly strategic and precise about making sure that it counts as much as it possibly can. You're like, oh, I'll get a little extra. If I miss on this one, that's all right. I love it. GMs don't know what they're doing. That's great. All right. Well, let's talk and see if we know what we're doing. So we're going to put our Stanley Cup predictions out there on the line right now. Michael, I know you kind of already cemented yours. So start us off. What are you committed to for this season?
Well, it's in print. It's in the yearbook.
Yeah, it's in writing.
So I can't go against it. I had Carolina over at Dallas. And, one of these years, Ryan Kennedy in the Hockey News and everyone else is going to be correct. Like Carolina is going to win a cup or Dallas is going to win a cup or they're going to play each other. And this is the all barbecue final that Ryan's been dreaming about salivating over. So I'm going, Hurricanes over the Stars. I don't think it'll make Gary Bettman happy, but like I said, it's going to make Ryan's belly happy.
That's right. I need to remember what I said. I have our yearbook right here. I make these predictions and then I don't remember.
Katie, how about we go to Katie's pick while Ryan's sifting?
I found mine.
Oh, here we go. All right.
Yeah. I had Los Angeles beating Florida. Now, mind you, this was before Barkov was hurt, so I feel like I can have.
That's
a chance
huge.
To reassess.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm going to stick with Los Angeles, despite what happened in Game 1, and I'll say Carolina.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So you're
how's LA going to win a cup if they can't get past the Oilers in the first round, Ryan? That's the big question.
Hey, you know what? I mean, if they get past them in the first round, then it's smooth sailing.
They're like, we did it.
Although they'll probably get Vegas in the second round. I'm not going to say it's easy.
No.
Anze Kopitar farewell revenge tour.
All right. I'm kind of feeling like we could see the revival of Tampa Bay, but I don't think they're going to win. So I am feeling like it's going to come from the West. I'm going to go with the Edmonton Oilers. And I know it's like, oh, that's an easier pick, but I really feel like if McDavid is going to win his time there, I still think it's going to be sooner into this whole new extension than it is going to be later. I think it starts to get more nefarious the longer that this goes. They've been close twice. So I'm going to ride out with Edmonton. I would have picked the Florida Panthers in 4 seconds if Barkov had not gotten injured, because number one, I love them, and that's easy for me to do, but I do just worry about what the health looks like. Although when we saw him walk up onto the stage to get his ring, no crutches or anything, and knowing the kind of player that he is and the dedication he's going to show to his recovery, it would not surprise me one bit if the Florida Panthers are able to make another impressive run. And when they get Tkachuk back, will impact that as well. All right, good predictions. We will see if any of us know what we're talking about, which we usually do not. But for over 75 years, the Hockey News has been the ultimate hockey fix. So you can get 12 issues delivered right to you. They've got stories, stats, predictions, and a bonus issue to start you off. So head over to thn.com to get in on all the action. All right, we got a few rapid fire here, and we're going to make them really rapid because we had some fun talking about things today. Sidney Crosby, officially the longest tenured captain in NHL history, 19 seasons, and he is still crushing it. Like, he is just Sidney Crosby prime. It never ends. Is he the greatest captain of all time? And if he's not, or if he's up there with someone else, who is another GOAT captain? Michael?
Yeah, I think he is the greatest captain of all time, and not just for what he did with the Penguins, but obviously with what he's done with Team Canada and what he's probably going to continue to do with Team Canada at the Olympics. Katie, take that. Okay.
Yep.
If I have to go with the second one, I'm going to go current because I know Ryan's going before my time, but I'm going to say Steven Stamkos. I don't know if Stamkos gets quite as much credit for what he pulled off in Tampa. That year in the bubble where he basically played one shift, came off the ice after scoring just a gorgeous goal, but hung around his team. Off the ice, you heard stories about how important and integral he was in that dressing room. Again, a guy that just doesn't get the credit, but 3 straight trips to the finals, almost pulled off the three-peat. I love Stammer.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say Crosby's definitely up there, but if I'm going GOAT, I'm going Jean Beliveau with the Montreal Canadiens. They won 5 Stanley Cups in the, I think he was captain for 11 years, and he was known as one of the classiest, if not the classiest player in NHL history. So I'll go with Jean Beliveau.
And it's funny how that does make a difference, right? Because again, if you talk about Crosby, I mean, there's not a better ambassador for the game. There's not a better human being in terms of the way he handles things. I hear story after story of players who have, just been a nobody at a development camp, and Crosby's going out, he's seeking them out, he's talking to them, right? Young guys. That's just not something that you see from everyone. And it's special the way Crosby truly takes an interest in every single person that's a part of the team. He just epitomizes a captain in the way he carries himself. And that doesn't even count for the fact that he is still crushing it out on the ice and being an incredibly efficient player in terms of helping the Penguins win on top of leading the team. So, yeah, I mean, he's going to be my GOAT forever, but I'm also very biased because I'm from Pittsburgh. So we like it. All right. Well, speaking of captains, the Boston Bruins announced that Pastrnak, McAvoy, and Hampus Lindholm will be the alternate captains this season. So no big official announcement. We thought it would be McAvoy with the C. Do we like this decision, Ryan, to go with no captain for the season?
No, I don't like it. I feel like McAvoy would have been the obvious choice. If you wanted to go co-captains, I guess you could do that with Pastrnak, but I feel like McAvoy is like up for the job and would want the job. So I think they should have just gone with him.
Yeah, I think I agree with Ryan. I think this is a little disappointing. It kind of tells me that Boston doesn't think that they're going to be a playoff team this year, and that they're like, okay, let's wait till next year where we think we're actually going to be a playoff team. Then we'll get the captain. This year feels like it's going to be just another kind of a rebuild, retool year, which is a little disappointing. But I'm with Ryan. It should have been McAvoy. The only thing I could think of was maybe they just didn't want to put the pressure on him because he's coming off that injury, and they really just want to see him get his game back. But he's going to be the guy, isn't he? So.
Yeah, it feels like it is inevitable. And I kind of agree with Ryan too, with I think McAvoy wants that. I don't think it's something that he's like, oh no, I'm going to have to carry that. I think he actually would embrace it. I think it's something he would like. Who knows? But you make an interesting point, Michael, about kind of just feeling like this season just isn't the season for them already. And it's like, we're just not going to do anything big yet. All right, final one here, and we'll wrap it up quickly. But we loved the LA Kings crown jerseys. I had this as a yay or nay question. But I mean, if you're on the nay side of this, then I don't know. Turn the show off. Those were amazing. And then I also read online that the Kings had basically come out in their regular jerseys, right? They warmed up in the other jerseys, and they saved the reveal of the helmets and the crown for when they got announced out onto the ice. So real quickly, guys, just start us off, Ryan. You're our jersey guy. What do we like? What do we think?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's one of my, the classic Chevrolet jersey is one of my favorites of all time. I think it was just such a great move. And to bring sort of an inspired look back, I think is the right way. And in terms of the helmets, I love fun helmets, to be honest. We see it more so, I think, in Europe or even in the NCAA, where, I mean, I was at Arizona State on the weekend, and they have awesome Sun Devil helmets featuring Sparky. So, I'm all for it.
Did Penn State have cool helmets too? Don't they have kind of stripes?
They do football.
It's like their football helmet. So it's like the blue stripe on a white helmet. So it's pretty cool. It's it's subtle, but it's really cool if you know that it's also the football helmet.
Yeah, we need more of that in the NHL. I don't know if there's anything against you have to have a solid color or something. Maybe there's something in the rule. No.
Well, now
we need more shine. We need more stripes.
Sort of.
We want it. We want it all. I like it. Be like college guys. All right, final one, really quick. Ryan, I'm putting you on the spot because you were there. You saw Gavin McKenna in person.
Yes.
Is he the real deal for college too? What do we think?
He's the real deal. And if I'm going to make an early comparison, he's like a slightly bigger version of Patrick Kane.
Oh, which would bode well for this potential Blackhawks McKenna again. That could be interesting.
Do I have to answer? He's not the real deal. No.
No, this was a Ryan Kennedy exclusive question because he was on site. And did you love Mullet Arena?
Oh, it was incredible. And the whole campus, I took a tour of the campus,
it's sick.
Imagine going to university and having palm trees everywhere.
It feels like you're on vacation and you're supposed to
really
go to class.
Does.
It's crazy there. It's very fun. All right, we love it. And McKenna was loving it. His forks down, the sellies. The kid was fully embracing what college hockey is all about. might have the CHL a little worried seeing how much fun he's having down
They are
there.
already the villains of NCAA, are they not?
Yes. He's fully embracing it. He loves
Yeah.
it. All right, guys, great stuff. I know we went a little long today, but the season just kicked off. We had a lot to get to, and there will be plenty more as the rest of the league gets underway. But that does it for this episode of the Hockey News Big Show. Thanks for watching. Katie Gaus, Michael Traikos, Ryan Kennedy, and we will see you next time.